Bill Boyle. We are live, and there he is. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you being here on Monday night.
Happy to be here.
Lots to talk about, lots of things I want to ask you about. Specifically, I was thinking of just trying to understand and catch up with what happened, read the conversations between our dear leader and the heroic leader of Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky was back in Washington, D.C. Feels like it got a little bit maybe undercover, but it was a really important conversation or visit, and it was supposed to establish some things. What are the takeaways? What's most important? What is going on?
Okay, so Zelensky's been trying to get Tomahawk missiles from the administration, and the administration has been willing to give them Tomahawks, or at least talk about it, because the Trump White House really wants a Nobel Peace Prize for their boss. And Trump's main motivation in all of this is not that he loves Russia, it's not that he hates Ukraine, anything like that. Trump wants to dominate the scene. He wants to get a peace deal in Ukraine so that he can justify demanding a Nobel Peace Prize. It's no more complicated than that. Underlying that, however,
only because Barack Obama won one.
Exactly, precisely. It's the most petty of motivations.
Right.
So anyone trying to read too much into it is wasting their time. What's more interesting is that underlying his demand and his neediness for this, there are really like sort of bedrock things about America's place in the world, Russia's place in the world, trade, the way the Pentagon feels about things, the way that, when they kind of go and push weird things, even on a bunch of Republican senators, they go, whoa, hold on. Where there are a lot of limitations and influences on what you can do in American foreign policy that Trump can't easily break, right? And people like to think of Trump as someone who can just do whatever the fuck he wants. But he came into office saying, we're going to completely blow Ukraine off. We're done. This is a waste. This is stupid. It's not our war, whatever. And the U.S. is supporting Ukraine almost to the degree it did before he came into office, and in some ways is being more aggressive against the Russians than Biden was. And that is because there are just underlying realities of the world that even Trump can't blow off. Maybe especially Trump can't blow off because he doesn't commit himself to the hard work it would take to really change policy. And so what's happened is, and this week is a really great example, the Financial Times claimed that Trump talked to Putin, set up this meeting in Hungary, and then had a meeting with Zelensky where he flipped out and said, you need to give up land and we're not going to give you Tomahawks and all this other stuff. This happened on a day, by the way, where Trump was freaking out about Venezuela. He was freaking out about the protest marches. He was freaking out about the shutdown. He was attacking Democrats. He was like all over the place that day. Well, the Trump White House very immediately denied that he said that to Zelensky.
Right.
Like immediately said, absolutely, we did not do that. But then they said, but it was the Russians who said they would give up territory. Like the Russians were the ones who were going to not demand all of the Donbass as part of a deal. And then guess what happened? The next day, the Russians came out and said, we never said that. And so there was all this mishigas and meltdown in the U.S. media, like, oh my God, Trump isn't giving them Tomahawks and he's giving in to the Russians because he loves Putin. None of that actually happened. Trump talked shit. If anything, he talked shit about the Russians being forced to give up more than they wanted. And he did not finalize a deal on Tomahawks with Ukraine. But what has actually gone on is a lot of the planning and logistics and the training, because we can't just give the Ukrainians Tomahawks and they can use them. That's going on right now. So and this is a classic of the Trump administration, where because there's just so much bullshit that floats around, the actual things that are really happening, the press doesn't even notice it or doesn't want to bother to explain it, or the media, the National Defense Team is now 5 guys at the New York Times when it used to be 65. There's just not enough firepower, bandwidth to get into this sort of thing. And I mean, what's happening right now? And again, a lot of analysts who talk about this would say, Bill Boyle said, well, they don't know who I am, frankly. But if they knew me and listened to this, they would say, like, what the fuck? This is terrible. Trump is blowing off the Ukrainians again, etc. But what has actually happened is that Trump has in effect said to the Europeans, we'll give you pretty much whatever you want. You got to pay for it. And the Europeans are taking Russian seized assets to pay for, in part, to pay for weapons for Ukraine. And they're putting up more money, and they're giving their own weapons, and they're ramping up artillery production, and they're ramping up drone production. The British, if I read this correctly, are looking to produce 85,000 drones a month. I know they're not at that number yet, but they're working to reduce that many and commit them to Ukraine. And so where we are right now is that the Europeans have stepped up. The U.S. has not stepped away. The Russians are losing 1,000 men a day. They are also now digging into their reserve system. They always avoided forcing people in their reserve system to fight. They offered to pay them. The Russians are now starting to have to go. And that means, by the way, pulling people out of Moscow, Kursk, et cetera, the core regions, and making them fight, who really don't want to be there, and who, when they get killed, grandmothers in Moscow are losing sons, grandsons, not grandmothers in Kalmyk and whatever. And so you're seeing a situation, from what my perspective on it is, the Russians are really losing. They're really losing. And then on top of that, they are running out of money. The projected debt Russia is planning to take on next year is smaller than the debt service they have in their economy. Or on their budget deficit. So the Russians are now in a position where they've got such a big debt, they're having to borrow more to cover that debt, which then gives them a greater debt. In other words, it's a debt trap, and they're running out of money, and they're running out of runway, really. And they're not making big gains in Ukraine. In fact, most of the gains they've made this year, they've lost, or they have been so useless, it gives them no benefit strategically or even tactically. So I think where we are is where last year I would have hoped we would be with the Russian. I think I told you a year or so ago, I thought the Russians had until about 2026. And I think that has remained correct.
Going
by
back,
the way, folks, you can listen to all of his old shows whenever I'm on, and I think you might be able to find that actual quote in there.
Going back just to specifically this weapon, the Tomahawks, I don't know. I think people probably wonder the significance, and I guess significance. My quick search here is they're long range. They go like 1,500 miles, and they aren't easy. They usually launch from Navy ships, but they can launch from land, and you'd have to give them the launchers as well. It's not that easy, but I guess what I'm reading and seeing is that this weapon, these missiles, would be a real war changer for Ukraine to have access to them, and Russia really doesn't want Ukraine to have access to these missiles.
So think about all the things that we were told were totally going to change the war, right? We were told that the javelins, the F-16s were going to change the war. The javelin, handheld manpads were going to change the war. The those Turkish Bayraktar drones at the beginning of the war, they were going to change the war. They don't change the war. The Tomahawks aren't going to change the war. They will give Ukraine some more flexibility, some more reach, but Ukraine's already hitting Russia 1,500 miles into Russia. They're already going past the Ural Mountains, hitting targets. They hit a target a month ago next to the Finnish border. So, the idea that this changes everything is wrong. What it would do, though, it would give them more capability, more punching power to a degree. It would also really tell you that the U.S. was in the Trump administration.
Right.
Once they give them Tomahawks, and the Russians, by the way, were not saying, oh my God, this is going to ruin everything. They were basically saying the Americans are betraying us. Trump is betraying us. It's what it says. It's not necessarily what it does. It's the signal it sends. And, Moscow now is starting to get in a position where they need to worry about war weariness in Russia. Their argument was, hey, if Trump wins the election, we're going to be able to make a deal with Trump. Trump is going to, cut off the aid, and he's going to be on our side. And we're going to have all these trade deals, and this big bet will pay off. I think it's very clear right now that's not true. And I think that for Russians, that's sinking in. They're starting to say, oh, shit, this isn't going away, and we're not going to have beach houses in Odessa. And the Ukrainians look like they're going to be able to stick in this for a long time.
Mm.
And the line they use about this is that the machine will go on until it breaks. I think we're starting to see the machine on the Russian side creak a lot.
Let me move on to another issue, as hard as it is, but I want to get your take on a few things tonight. And that is the No King's Day protests of the weekend. You are Bill B in DC. You were in DC. What are your thoughts? I've read like 7 think pieces
Right.
on protest and these protests in general, what they mean, what they don't mean, what they lead to, what they don't lead to.
Right.
We obviously heard Republican leaders across the board criticize them in the harshest of ways. These are America-hating terrorists and
Right.
the terrorist sympathizers and all of the rest. I'm not sure how effective that was or that is, or certainly it's far worse than saying basket of deplorables, but doesn't matter. What are your thoughts? What did you do, and what was the significance of these massive protests around the country?
Right. So I went downtown DC, rode bikes around with my kid, took pictures, the usual. I heard numbers as high as 200,000 for DC. That seems high to me, but it was certainly well over 50 to 70. I didn't see all of it probably. And that is the thing about these protests. It's interesting because they are intentionally spread out. There was a protest in downtown DC. There was also two other protests in other parts of downtown DC. There were multiple protests in Arlington. So I think the thinking, and it's very smart, is don't give Trump one big thing to hit if he chooses to choose violence. And on the mall, I saw only on the way, a quarter mile away from the mall, one kind of uncomfortable looking group of National Guard guys, like 5 of them. On the mall itself, almost no federal officers at all. There were Capitol Police. There were DC police. I can tell you that as I rode my bike down 11th Street, and there were a bunch of DC police, I was yelling, "Fuck Trump," and holding my hand up and getting high fives down the street from MPD. It was a carnival atmosphere, and it was a fun atmosphere. And that gets at something that I think is a big deal, which is that, Mike Johnson and these guys are like, these parades or protests are satanic, and they're full of anti-Christical, anarchist, homosexuals who are trying to destroy like everything that the Puritans held dear. And you go to the protests, and there's a bunch of middle-class people, riding their Cannondale or with their kid in a stroller with a ton of very hilarious, animal outfits, inflatable animal outfits of all varieties. And I think that the Republicans make a gigantic mistake in turning these things, or trying to turn these things, into some terrifying thing, because the average American sees on CBS News that night a bunch of people that look like them, who look like they're kind of having fun, and are certainly, it's obviously ludicrous the way it's described.
Yeah.
And the thing that an authoritarian project cannot countenance, the thing that it cannot accept, is to be made to look ridiculous. And that is what these protests, and thank God for Portland, Oregon. I am genuflecting and blessing you and whatever. Portland has been the Los Alamos of how to figure out how to make the Trump people look ridiculous. And it's like a memeing everywhere. There's the meme of the guy and the frog where it's Morpheus. It's the frog saying to Morpheus, like, "Are you saying I'll be able to dodge pepper balls?" And then it's Morpheus saying, when you're ready, you won't have to. And then there's a video below that of the guys shooting pepper balls at the frog outfit, and they're all bouncing. And it's just like amazing. Like I told you about Andor, that I thought that Andor picked up the actual majority cultural context way better than Trump does. And in a weird way, you can see it in these protests, how they're like, there's a real, I heard people saying, "I have friends everywhere," right?
Yeah.
At the protests. This country is inherently based on a moderate revolution. And I don't think that cultural truth ever goes away. And I think that the Trump people, fortunately for all of us, are going to forever be rowing against the current of what regular Americans really want, and which we're about to see, I think, pretty soon in elections in New Jersey and Virginia and a few other places.
What do you make of the fact that all these people came out all over the country, over 2,700 events, hardly any arrests, hardly any
Yeah,
violence? If there was any, it would have been played way up. And they weren't even able to create the type of violence that they want to create with their propaganda cameramen behind
yeah,
ICE agents and so on. I mean, no violence, no arrests, no
yeah,
kings.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, the two incidents of violence that I know about, one was some dude who brought a gun to one of the protests and was tackled by the crowd immediately, who called the cops over and they grabbed the guy and the gun, and that was it. It's almost a non-event. And the other was like a New York Giants fan in New York who someone grabbed his glasses and he fell and hurt his head.
I watched that video about 150 times. I don't wish suffering on people, including
I,
people I hate.
I have to say,
You think my rule is, and I think let's just talk about it because everybody's seen that video. By the way, I don't know if that was that was Sunday. It was after his team was up 33 points in the fourth quarter and lost to the Broncos.
Okay. So it was PTSD. Yeah.
It was on a Sunday. What Saturday was the protest, but clearly there was some, young folks out there. And anyway, here's the thing. I've told my daughters, if you ever say the N-word, especially to a black person, you deserve to get punched in the face. And in this case, he said the F word. He said fag. He called them all fags. I'll just say it. And then some guy took his glasses. Now, I don't think the guy should have taken his glasses, but as soon as he said fag, I think I will allow him to be have his glasses taken. And then somebody else tripped him, and when I thought it was mean, and he slammed his face into the pavement. Of course, again, I don't wish harm on people or suffering, but if you're going to fall and not put your arms out, we're going to watch that video billions of times. Like the way he fell just on his face in a cartoon-like manner, and it was memed so quickly. I'm pretty obsessed with it, I got to say.
I felt like that video was a bunch of people acting like assholes, which in no way detracted from the protest marches at all. Like it just wasn't, and there wasn't
on the day. It wasn't on the same day as the marches.
Yeah, exactly. So there really was no way, and there is no way to sort of turn these things into ways for the Trump people to leverage their authoritarian impulses or whatever. And I can tell you, I go on Facebook to where I am, and like there's nobody on the right going, "We got you guys." It's all very quiet.
What did you say a moment ago about the way? How did you phrase it when you're able to kind of ridicule and make fun of an authoritarian? You're not a very good authority. How did you phrase that?
Authoritarian projects cannot accept being laughed at.
Right.
It is anathema to them. I probably used some $5 word and should have just said they hate it. And they hate it because, authoritarian governments depend to a great degree on passive acquiescence of this idea that they have the power to coerce you. And when you make fun of them, that passive acquiescence of their power evaporates. Once you think the local block warden or MAGA street captain is a clown, then you're not going to obey in advance or when he's not around, right? And that's the bottom line. That's the genius of these protests. When you think about it, Trump got a lot of mileage out of, and I still don't get it because it doesn't work on me at all. But a lot of people would say, well, he's actually really funny. And to me, I grew up with guys like him, and I think, no, complete fucking asshole. But he, to a certain section of the country, who, by the way, feel themselves oppressed, right? Think about all the Trump people who feel themselves oppressed and feel released by Trump dropping in an AI video crap on protesters.
Yeah.
That he is the sort of authoritarian version of that, where he's trying to, it's his power in that he can motivate a bunch of MAGA people with that. It's his weakness in that for the vast majority of people, that does not become your Il Duce or your Führer.
Yeah.
He's too ridiculous. He's too silly. He doesn't have, Mussolini's ability to talk about the future of Italy that he could create. It's all just backwards looking, resentment and ball busting. It doesn't have the same legs that say other fascist projects have had.
What about the government shutdown? That's the other thing I want to ask you about. I saw some reporting, some polling that it doesn't look great for Democrats even. I mean,
Really?
I think yeah, Harry Enton on CNN, who I don't know, he's
no, dude, he sucks. He sucks.
yeah,
He's so bad.
fair
He
enough,
is
but
so bad.
he was analyzing a poll. Let me try
And
to
he always picks the thing that looks worse for the Democrats every single time.
fair enough, but yeah, I'm just wondering. Well, what are your thoughts on the current state of things as we head into? I mean, I saw one prediction; it could last till November. What are the consequences here? Who's going to get blamed? Seems like Republicans can take a lot of pain.
Well, so everything that I've just spent time talking to friends this weekend who know more than I do about Congress and the White House and whatever, and it feels like both sides are pretty dug in. Now, they're dug in for very different reasons, and you can be dug in for good reasons and you can be dug in for bad reasons. The polling, if you look at Nate Silver even, but G. Elliott Morris, who used to run 538, most of the polling shows that Republicans are being blamed for this 58%, Democrats like 28%, the rest don't know. It's very much Trump's Congress. This is the negative of a supine Congress, is that when, there's a fight over something like this, you get blamed because you control the whole government. You can't even pass it off on your own party in the House. It's so obviously Trump forcing all this. The Republicans think, hey, fuck it, we control the government. I'm Donald Trump. I can do whatever I want. This is great. It's perfect. And we can stick it to Democrats by hurting them on healthcare, which they love. That's really the motivation. There's no real thought through other than that. I'll explain how you can tell there isn't. The healthcare subsidies that were put together were very explicitly written, in part by Democrats, to be subsidies only for COVID. Is that the first time you're hearing anybody say that?
The subsidies only for COVID. Oh, they were supposed to be temporary
They were explicitly written as temporary subsidies.
Yeah.
That should be, and it's funny, someone who is an ex-Republican because of Trump, who is a lobbyist, said it was wild to me. They're not saying this. They're not saying it. They're not saying, hey, these were temporary subsidies. Democrats agreed they were temporary subsidies. You're not hearing this at all. And now it's too late for them to say. Because Democrats very adeptly, and I know some people are going to fall out of their chair when they hear Democrats being described as adept, but they very adeptly said, your cost is going to go up. It's going to go up by X. It's going to be bad, and it's terrible. And if anyone brought up that they were COVID subsidies, the Democrats just ignored it and said, number's going to go up. That's it.
Right.
To the degree that Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the Democrat side on this, because she's saying my constituents are going crazy. They're looking at their costs going from $500 a month to $2,300 a month or worse.
Right.
Democrats are on the politically right side to be on this. People love their subsidies. The economy is bad, by the way. People are relatively making less money, inflation, everything else. This is how you create a wave election, is by screwing people on something like this. I think there's already a wave election coming. I think that this will just, if it goes for a long enough period, or if Republicans somehow manage to force Democrats to eat this, you're going to get a wave election anyway. You're going to have Republicans vote against Republicans because they're furious that their healthcare costs went up by $15,000 a year in the middle of an already bad economy with tons of inflation, right? Trump's people just don't really, the boss wants this. That's what we do. That's it. Russ Vought says, fuck them. It allows us to fire a few more people, which it isn't really. So I think it'll go on for a while because they're both committed. Democrats are committed for good reasons. Republicans are committed for the dumbest possible political reasons. At some point, the dam will break, but I don't think Democrats are giving in. I really don't. I think Democrats are happy to sit here and do this. And by the way, when you've already torn the heart out of the government, The Democrats are like, okay, what are you going to do that you didn't already do to me? And I can tell you, it's very fascinating. What I see in DC is business is not that much down during the shutdown because it already got slammed before the shutdown.
Right.
They already cut a big chunk of the government out. So we are already used to lean times. So it doesn't have the effect. I don't think the unions are, and that's the thing. Do the Democratic unions eventually start to scream about it? What happens eventually? But, Trump's idea, we're not going to pay these people, he loses in court immediately on that. Over. So they're going to have to pay all these people anyway.
Mm.
I just don't see what their leverage is. What are they going to do to Democrats they haven't already done? And what are they going to give them that Democrats need? Democrats don't actually need anything. If this continues and they screw these people out of these subsidies, they're going to vote for Democrats anyway.
What do you make of Speaker Johnson not seating this woman who won her special election in Arizona, Grijalva, like 3 weeks ago? Everybody knows the reason. It's because she'd be the vote on discharge.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
That's not the reason why he's not seating her?
No, I mean, she's brown, and brown people don't deserve to sit in Congress. I mean, that's obviously. I am completely kidding. He is 100% not seating her because he's terrified of the Epstein vote. Yes.
And what they're trying to do is they're trying to drag it out and convince a couple of Republicans in the House to pick them off. But why? I mean, maybe they'll succeed, but you would think.
I think that even a lot of the crazier House members, is Tom Massey going to say, like, sure, the president is screaming that I need to be kicked out of office. So sure, I mean, it's hard for people to
he's
get.
He's not going to, but I think they just need a couple of others. But my understanding is that there's like 30 or 40 Republicans that are ready to vote on this. That's what the rumor is. Eric Swalwell said it publicly, but
the files are going to come out eventually. I don't think that Johnson is the evil sort of bastard that Trump is. But he knows that it's sort of like this is going to be, the child molestation stories about Epstein. They're sort of like the POW MIA flags you see flying around still. There were no POWs in Vietnam. Vietnam was not hiding missing in action Americans. In fact, they helped us find missing in action Americans within a couple of years after the end of the war.
No POWs?
What's that?
Go ahead.
There were the Vietnamese never held on to any American POWs. They did not. They at the war ended.
There's no evidence or record of that?
What's that?
There's no evidence or record that they held on to people.
Yeah. It's all bullshit. It was America. It was America's saving myth for the fact that we treated our own soldiers like shit. So then after the war, the saving myth became, we are really going to be there for them now and get all these poor guys that are still in, rotting in bamboo prisons in Vietnam back to America. It was a complete, utter legend and lie that made people feel bad.
I didn't know that. You would know.
Oh, believe me. I say this to people and they get real mad and I go, okay, show me any evidence.
Yeah.
I live around the corner from a guy who spent, that very old guy now, who spent 15 years as a U.S. military guy after the war going back to Vietnam to retrieve remains. Like the Vietnamese government was like, hey, we found bodies, come here and get them. Let's bring a priest in and do this the right way, etc. Like that. So those flags are a myth that will not die about something that never occurred. Epstein is a myth that occurred, and it's got the same emotional oomph, not to Democrats, interestingly, but to Republicans and to MAGA people. They are obsessed with the idea that elites are out stealing children and taking advantage of them sexually. They're totally obsessed. That's what Comet Pizza was about.
Right.
And this is the problem for these guys, is that it's a real thing, or it's a half real thing that can really hurt them in the real world politics in ways that most other things can't. Particularly if it turns out if Trump but even more than Trump, if just a bunch of other Republicans who are still around or were just around are implicated. I think it'll be a very severe problem for them. I think it already is, frankly.
what about that movie Christian Bale and Steve Zahn were in? Wasn't he a POW? Wasn't that based on a real life?
During the war.
It was during. It wasn't right. It wasn't after.
Yeah.
I
After the war, it was like, okay, we're done. The war's over.
Rambo 3.
Was that Afghanistan or was that Rambo 4? I forget.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Aaron the farmer in the live chat said that.
This way, there were bars in Vietnam called Rambo.
Really?
Mm-hmm. There are famous bars, a couple of Apocalypse Now bars in Hanoi and Saigon. So it's not like the Vietnamese were like, this is a thing never to discuss. They were like, whatever, Americans are nuts. They'll come and spend their money here. So great.
I want to ask you one more thing. There's been this kind of conversation and debate, even within folks here at the stand-up community. We were talking about it Thursday night at the Hangout. You weren't there. People should come. The Hangouts are awesome. We have great time. Having this discussion about giving credit to Trump for the Middle East, quote, peace process that he helped in the hostage exchange, which the peace ceasefire lasted about 6 hours.
Yep.
There's violence has erupted. 97 Palestinians were killed. A couple of IDF soldiers were killed. So there's no peace. But what do you make of the idea that he should be given credit? Is there some reporting that during the Biden administration, Trump called Netanyahu and scuttled a deal that was about to happen? I'm not sure how good that reporting is, whether or not it happened. But if it's the truth, it would be not unlike Nixon in Vietnam, Reagan in the hostages. Yep. Like, when before they get elected, say, hold on, let me get credit for that. It'd be like Trump scuttling the immigration reform deal that was going to potentially pass in Congress. So don't do it until I get elected. Anyway, what do you think about the credit he deserves or does not?
So I don't think he deserves a lot of credit because he hasn't actually accomplished very much. And I think that should be the standard. It shouldn't be. I mean, I've said this to you before. The one slightly okay thing about Donald Trump is that he apparently is committed to the idea of like, it'd be great for me to end these wars. Now, his motivation is he wants to be the great world peacemaker, right? But he also seemed, even though his motivation sucks, he actually does seem committed to the idea that like the war in Ukraine should be over tomorrow. It should stop at its ceasefire line.
But like, even that's transactional. J.L. Covan had a really good rant on this where he basically argued that Trump got a plane. This negotiation
that's a separate one. I'm talking about Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in the Middle East. The Qataris were the negotiator, and they gave him a plane.
Yeah, but that plane benefited the Qataris. The Qataris didn't give him the plane to help with those negotiations. They gave him that plane so they could get a base in Colorado.
Trump did not like. Well, there was that too. Trump did not like.
Trump is not going to extract a price from the Qataris to help the Israelis. He's going to extract a price from the Israelis. Well, the Qataris actually are a sort of moderate, semi-neutral interlocutor in that. That plane was for other things. And I think that, by the way, Bibi didn't want this ceasefire. Trump forced it on him.
Right.
And there's a certain amount of an interesting thing that happens with Trump in that guys like Bibi and Putin and Erdogan and Modi and Xi and Trump, they all really politically depend on the political sense of their, what's the word for it? Not machismo, but they're I don't know, they can't be challenged at home. And they can't look like other countries can push them around. And so when Trump goes out in the world and says, I want a peace deal with Putin, fuck you, do a peace deal. Just stop on the firing line. Putin almost by definition cannot agree to that because it will kill him politically at home.
Right.
Because again, it's the sort of, you can't make fun of authoritarian that kills them. What you also can't do is they can't allow themselves to be diminished. Right. And if Trump says to Putin, this is the deal I want, get in line and do it, that has real implications politically back home. It's why Trump is having so much trouble making trade deals with anybody, because he's trying to dominate everyone. And it's not, ironically, Trump is the one guy who doesn't need that. But he is operating the way they do and not doing it as well. And they're just saying, fuck off. We're not going to go along with you because you can get away with it, but Xi can't look weak. Modi can't look weak. Erdogan can't look weak. And I think that you're seeing that with Israel and Gaza. The reason Israel's not as strong as China or India, right? So it couldn't really defy the U.S. too far. But of course, what our friend Bibi does is that as soon as Trump's attention wavers, he kills the deal, breaks the deal some way, right? And that's what we saw in Gaza. There was a temporary deal. I'm very happy some of the hostages got released, some bodies are returned or whatever. But we've just switched to a place where now Hamas can get the shit kicked out of it by Israel.
Right.
And can't really do much about it. Trump will say, hey, I got you a peace deal. And that's it for them. And they're done.
What do you make of these fishing boats or drug smugglers being assassinated off the coast of South America?
In Colombians in Colombian waters.
It's
There's
pretty.
two things that happened. The head of the Southern Command quit
Yeah, I
well
saw that.
before he would normally have quit. And the reporting is that he did so because it was illegal. And he was like, look, I just can't keep doing this. Like, this is totally illegal. The second thing that you notice, they hit one boat. 2 people alive were taken by U.S. forces. These are what did Trump say? Every time we hit a boat, we're saving 25,000 American lives.
Mm.
Well, presumably this wasn't their first trip on the boat, or they weren't passengers on a cocaine boat. And what is the U.S. doing? Just returning them to the countries they come from. Why? Because it wasn't a cocaine boat. We are randomly or semi-randomly hitting fishing boats in the Caribbean Ocean. A, to provoke Venezuela. B, because Trump saw a clear and present danger 40 years ago and got the exact wrong message from it. And it's totally against international law, and it underlines just the sheer fucking stupidity of these people. Just the sheer stupidity.
In the past, when Obama and Bush would assassinate people with Hellfire missiles from Predator drones in places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Yemen, including al-Awlaki, who was like one of the most effective recruiters of extremists, but also an American. That was very controversial. But the thing was, you knew who they were. Like,
oh yeah, this is not even making that attempt.
These people that were apparently killing, they're not even saying who they are. There's no evidence of a crime against them. They're just seemingly killing people. And by the way, you keep saying cocaine boat, which is hilarious. And it's also my safe phrase. But regardless,
nice.
You don't know if there's any cocaine on that boat. You don't know.
There's no.
And if there is, prove it.
Exactly. And by the way, if there is, and you're able to hit the boats like that, you could also intercept them.
Yeah. Well, yes.
And by the way, killing Colombians on a Colombian boat in Colombian water is an act of war. It is an act of war. We did do that.
Oh boy.
Colombia was our best ally in South America,
right,
up until January 20th of this year.
Yeah,
they were our best ally. Now the Colombians are like, fuck the U.S. I mean, can you imagine if the Colombians hit an American boat in American water?
Well, that wouldn't be the same.
And killed them, but they killed Americans, and the Colombians were like, drug boat. What are you supposed to do about it? I mean, it's just, it is so off the reservation, so off-piste. It's insane. But again, and I've said this to you before, when Trump got reelected, and I did everything I could to help him, to keep him from being reelected, that's when I said, okay, I was always worried about what was going to happen. Now it's happened. And I think that people need to get in that. I won't preach too long on this, but people need to get in the mindset of stop going, oh my God, every day is a crisis. What are we going to do? Just go do it. Just get out there and, go to the marches, organize, do what you need to do. I mean, I will tell you that a thing that I do is I talk to the various police forces around the city when I'm out. And I ask them, how do you feel about these clowns and the masks running around? And I will tell you, they do not like it. Up to and including Customs and Border Patrol. You would think Customs and Border Patrol would be like, hey, yeah, whatever, they're trying to do a job. They were like, no, these assholes are untrained and the masks are bullshit. They were like, look at us. None of us are wearing masks. That's my name. You want my badge number? This is Customs and Border Patrol saying this.
Yeah.
And what an officer said, I won't say what group he was from, but he said, imagine if you're us and you've been doing what we've been doing for 20 years and highly trained, and some file clerk who works at DHS gets a $50,000 bonus to come out here and violate people's rights.
Well,
and I would strongly recommend everybody to talk about that aspect of things with the police they know. A bunch of unprofessional, totally, and by the way, immune to prosecution, whatever they do, because you don't know who actually hit you, called you something on the street, took a shot at you. And I have a friend who had an unmarked ICE vehicle intentionally bump her off her bike with their car.
Jesus.
And then take off. So, it's out there and it's a real thing. And then the other thing I will say is I'm sure this stuff is hard to parse if you haven't been in Portland, Chicago, DC, LA.
Yeah.
People feel very like, well, how can it be that bad?
Right.
And I describe it to people who are not from these places, and you can tell that they really don't want to believe it's happening. It's happening.
Yeah.
Like
By the way,
gigantic amounts of violations.
New reporting, let's see, this is the Atlantic magazine. 1/3 of ICE Academy recruits are failing out because they can't pass a personal fitness test. The pass, recruits must do 15 push-ups, 32 sit-ups, and run a mile and a half in 15 minutes, 14 minutes. They can't do it.
I have bad knees. I'm 58 years old. I'm only just getting back in shape. I could have done that before I started working out.
Yeah, you're not. You would fail the ICE test, but that's neither here nor there. You're riding around.
I would fail the moral section or the immoral section of the test, the amoral section of the test.
Well, great talk as always. Your wealth of knowledge, information, opinion, and moral clarity. We appreciate whenever you join us, Bill. If people are watching right now, a lot of people are watching, and go over and follow Bill on Blue Sky and learn more from him there. And
I hope the insults are flying fast and furious on the chats. It would be.
No.
I hope so. I can't see the chat, so you should set it up so that somebody like me can see the chat, because I want to know. Like,
I can't see it. I guess I have to figure out how to put it on the screen. I'll do that next time.
Because I was insulting Christian Finnegan and he couldn't see it. It was really.
Right. No, we got to do that. Bill B in DC.
Yes.
On
only on Blue Sky. Twitter exists, but I never use it. And I'm going to be in Austin the rest of the week. So if anyone has any good spots, let me know.
What are you doing there?
Going to eat meat, see music, and drink beer.
Cool. Great. Have a great time. Send me pictures.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for doing this.
Cheers, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching live. Patreon.com/PeteDominic. Can't do it without you. Please come on over. Sign up for free on YouTube and Substack at Stand Up with Pete right now. Thanks, everybody. Bye.